This is an overview of the Discipleship Journey. This is the tool found on page 3 of the River Tree Discipleship Toolkit. So, discipleship is rooted in imitation, not just information. So, this tool lays out a path towards mature discipleship and what it means to grow in Christ in a discipleship relationship. We are borrowing this tool from a couple of different people, both 3DM and Mike Breen, and their work in disciple making, as well as the good people at Giant worldwide. We've kind of adapted some language from a couple of different places to really tailor this for our River Tree community. So let's take a look at the tool and start off with the picture, the principle or concept that this tool teaches us. So as we see here, there's 4 corners to this square. And if you start in the top right, the top left of this square, you'll see curious, people who are curious towards Jesus. You follow the path around from people who are curious about Jesus, people who are committed to following Jesus, people who are called in the sense that they understand their calling in life, and then moving to the bottom left hand where people are commissioned, they're empowered and sent out to be on mission, and you follow that arrow right back around to the curious. This is a picture of missionary multiplication, discipleship that is aimed not only at following Jesus, but following Jesus into mission in the world. And these represent 4 phases that can be easily seen in the life and journey of the disciples as they follow Jesus through the Gospels. They start off at that place in the left-hand corner, curious, where even before the disciples respond to follow Jesus, most of them had been witness to the person and works of Jesus in their town. So as they launch into the journey of following, a leader and the disciples start to journey together. The leader is the primary doer, and the disciple simply watches and sees what happens. These are people who are observing, but not involved in mission. And as we think about the spaces in which we go every day, where we live and work and play, there are people who are curious about Jesus, but who are not followers of Jesus. They've not answered that invitation, that call to join Jesus on the road. And so the way that they move from that position of just simply being curious to people who are actually committed to Jesus is through access, through watching a leader's life and watching them follow Christ. I always like to think about this as that lean-in moment. There's times where you notice that people, as Jesus becomes part of the conversation rather than leaning away or leaving that conversation, actually lean in because they are curious about what they're seeing. They're being, your questionable life, your provocative life, a life that testifies of the kingdom is being seen, and the Spirit of God is at work drawing them towards Christ. So by the time they hit that top right-hand corner, they are committed. The disciples have responded to the invitation of Jesus to come and follow. They leave their old way of life behind, commit to a journey with Jesus. So in this next move on the square, the leader recognizes the disciples are ready to begin trying to do things on their own. The leader begins to invite the disciples to help in ministry. So that's where this idea of I do and you help. If you are the disciple maker in this situation, you are actively in ministry and you're making room for the people you're discipling to join you elbow to elbow in imitating you and learning from you as they help what's happening. When we look at the life of Jesus, this is what happens with his disciples. They say yes. They leave their life behind and they join Jesus on the road in mission. But they're not immediately thrown into high-level ministry. Instead, they're simply going with Jesus and doing the things that Jesus asks as they help him on the road. This period in the discipleship journey is often marked where people are very conscious of what they are lacking in their journey. They're lacking, whether it's knowledge, whether it's skills, equipped, confidence, spirit empowerment, however you want to frame this. This is a critical place in the discipleship journey to be invested as a leader, to be highly encouraging, highly hands-on, but also to make room for people to join in so that they can begin to own mission and own just their calling just as people of God to join Jesus in the world. So that journey towards calling in that bottom corner, that called position is most marked by what we see in like Luke 9 and 10. where the disciples are given instruction, sent out to go do the things that Jesus was doing, to then come back and share what happened. In this phase of the journey, the leader recognizes the growing calling and competencies of their disciples and releases them to do things on their own. So this is epitomized by this idea of you do and I'll help. This is a shift in the way that we are empowering people, not only to cooperate and help in ministry, but actually handing things over to them based on what we're seeing with their calling and their competency, their ability to do. As that is shifting, we're actually empowering them to lead, to kind of own mission in their world, and to go forward with us playing a secondary role, but still being very close in proximity. It's not necessarily hand-holding, but we're there very intentionally to nurture, to push, to encourage, to be very hands-on as they are discovering their own call, their own passion, their own gifting, and being released into that in ministry. And finally, we get to that fourth corner, commissioned. As Jesus headed towards the cross, he has a critical conversation with his disciples, where he talks about launching them through the empowerment and the direction and guidance of the Holy Spirit to continue his ministry as they go and they make disciples of all nations. In this last phase of the journey, disciples are ready to go out on their own. So leaders' role shift to empowerment, encouragement, with this idea of sending them out into a new context. So this is that phrase, you do and I'll watch. So proximity becomes a question because they have been discipled to the point where they can be released and launched into new mission with confidence in their skills, in their character, in what they've seen, where they have a confidence to go out and follow Jesus as they have seen you follow Jesus. So this journey, we see in the center of the square a clock. That clock is a reminder that this takes time, that there's not a time frame necessarily in mind, as much as that this is a journey and a process that we're walking through with people. And the journey that we're hoping people will enter into in discipling at River Tree is one where people, regardless of where they start in the square, are constantly journeying towards intentionally growing and understanding that they are called by God, that they have committed themselves to Jesus. They have a calling that we want to help them cultivate and grow in so that we can commission them and release them to be intentional missionaries everywhere that they live and work and play. Now, let's get to the mirror. How does this tool help us see ourselves more clearly? As a general exercise, this is a great tool to think about where we currently stand with Christ on our journey as a follower of Jesus, as disciples ourselves. And so to think about this, generally this journey from someone who's looking at Jesus but not committed all the way to someone who is fully committed and equipped and sent out by Jesus to join him on mission. Where are you on this journey? What has your journey entailed so far? What obstacles have you faced? And what obstacles could you face thinking about moving from one phase to the next? To think about this as far as your discipleship relationships. Who is discipling you right now, intentionally? Where do you see yourself on this journey? Are you moving towards growth, or have you been in the same place for a while? What do you feel like the biggest obstacles are in your growth as a disciple? What could help you move from where you are forward? What do you need from somebody? And how can you best gain elbow-to-elbow experience in following Jesus right now? If you are someone who is discipling another person, or who is in a discipleship relationship where you are like iron sharpening iron, one person sharpening another, who are you investing in? Who are you discipling right now? Are you living a life that is worth imitating? Are you, as we think of those ideas of I do this and you watch, or you help, or you do and I help, are you living out that kind of relationship, one that is helping people gain the skills and experiences and to develop the character of Christ in their lives so that they can grow in their journey? How are you empowering and releasing people to do what they're committed and called to do? Are you helping people move around that square in a way? And think about the people that you're discipling. Where do you see them right now? And what are some possible next steps that you could help them make as they walk forward? The window. How does this tool help us to see our world more clearly? First, we have to see discipleship as a process that we go through alongside other people. We need people we can imitate, and we need to be imitatable, I think that's a word, by the people Christ puts in our path. This also reminds us that as we live curious lives that provoke questions, God may want us to invite people into discipleship relationships so that they can grow. So if I was in an intentional discipleship relationship with people, one way that I could use this tool is a way for us to simply reflect on where we are. For us to say, okay, where are you with your journey with Jesus? And who's discipling you, and what do you need from them at this point? Another thing that you could use it for is to introduce the path that you want to head down with someone who is young in the faith, for them to get an idea of what discipleship can look like, where you can help move from someone who's simply an onlooker to someone who has said yes to Jesus, who has discovered and been equipped in their callings, who has been gifted and uniquely shaped to be commissioned into mission for the future, and to welcome them into a journey with this idea of launching them out as equipped and fully formed Christ followers, being one of the things that you're intentionally moving towards. Think about this as a way to kind of paint the picture of where are we going and how are we going to get there. This is a great invitation to look at this journey of Jesus, not just simply as a life of faithfulness, but one that is headed towards a specific missional end.